Rock bottom. Nathan Cole used to be someone who mattered. When he closed his eyes at night, he could still feel the satisfying weight of precision tools in his calloused hands. He could smell the distinct blend of machine oil and metal that had perfumed his world for 15 years. He could hear the soft hum of engines coming to life under his expert touch. Engines he had personally fine-tuned until they purred like satisfied cats. Once, he had been the man other engineers called when they were stumped. "Give it to Nathan," they'd say. "If he can't fix it, it can't be fixed." At his desk at Precision Motors, one of Detroit's premier automotive manufacturers, photos had chronicled a life well lived. Nathan with his wife Abby on their honeymoon in Colorado, both grinning beneath snow-capped mountains. Nathan receiving his master's degree in mechanical engineering, his parents beaming with pride. Nathan with his team after they'd solved a critical drivetrain issue that had stumped engineers across 3 continents. Those photos were gone now. So was everything else. Tonight, like every night for the past 8 months, Nathan's bed was a threadbare army surplus blanket spread across cold concrete beneath a Sacramento highway overpass. His pillow was a backpack containing his few remaining possessions, a worn copy of Advanced Electric Vehicle Systems, a pocket knife, a half-empty notebook filled with engine designs he still sketched when despair threatened to consume him, and the faded business card of the HR representative who had called him into her office last year. "I'm sorry, Nathan," she'd said, not quite meeting his eyes. "The company is restructuring. We're shifting focus to autonomous systems and AI integration. Your position has been eliminated." 15 years of loyal service, countless innovations, patents with his name on them. None of it had mattered in the end. Just another line item to be eliminated from a spreadsheet. He'd been confident at first. Arrogant, even. "I'll have another job within the month," he'd assured Abby as they sat at their kitchen table. The termination paperwork spread between them like a malignant puzzle. "Someone with my experience? The phone will be ringing off the hook." The phone never rang. It turned out that in the rapidly evolving automotive landscape, companies weren't looking for 45-year-old mechanical engineers with specialized experience in traditional drivetrains. They wanted young coders fresh out of school, AI specialists, machine learning experts. Nathan's deep knowledge of thermal dynamics and mechanical engineering, once his greatest asset, had become his heaviest anchor. 3 months of unemployment became 6. Their savings dwindled. Bill collectors called with increasing frequency. The mortgage payment fell behind. The tension at home thickened until it felt like another presence in the room. A third party in their marriage that neither of them had invited. "You need to adapt, Nathan," Abby had urged one night, her voice tight with restraint. "Take some online courses. Learn to code. Something." "I'm an engineer," he'd snapped back. "A damn good one. I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not just to appease some 30-year-old HR manager who doesn't know a camshaft from a crankshaft." Pride. That had been his downfall. That stubborn Detroit pride that equated compromise with surrender. Then came the day he returned home from another fruitless job interview to find Abby's closet empty and a note on the kitchen counter. "I can't watch you destroy yourself. Call me when you're ready to move forward." She had gone to stay with her sister in Phoenix. 2 weeks later, the bank took the house. After that, things had accelerated with terrifying speed. His car broke down, the final irony for a man who had spent his life making machines run perfectly. Unable to afford repairs, he had abandoned it. Without transportation, finding work became even harder. Without an address, it became nearly impossible. So here he was, Nathan Cole, once one of Detroit's most respected automotive engineers, now huddled beneath an overpass near a Tesla supercharger station in Sacramento, watching the world speed by without him. The supercharger station had become his accidental home for a simple reason. It offered the one thing an invisible man craves most: the opportunity to feel connected to his past life, even if only as an observer. Here, he could watch the sleek electric vehicles pull in and out, listen to snippets of technical conversation, and sometimes, if he was very quiet and unobtrusive, even offer subtle advice to Tesla owners experiencing minor issues with their vehicles. Try holding down both scroll wheels on the steering wheel for 10 seconds. He'd murmur to the perplexed owner of a Model S whose screen had frozen. They'd look at him with surprise, sometimes suspicion, But when the system rebooted perfectly, their thanks was worth the risk of rejection. These small moments kept him sane. They reminded him that underneath the dirt and despair, he was still Nathan Cole. He still knew things. He still mattered, even if the world had forgotten him. Tonight, the early autumn air carried a chill that penetrated his thin jacket. Nathan sat on a concrete barrier at the edge of the supercharger station, chewing the last bite of a sandwich he'd saved from a church outreach program the day before. The station was unusually busy, a mixture of commuters heading home and what appeared to be wealthier patrons in town for some tech conference. Nathan could always tell the difference. The commuters plugged in their vehicles efficiently and then retreated to their phones. The conference attendees chatted loudly about funding rounds and valuations, their Tesla key cards dangling from expensive lanyards. Neither group saw him. That was the thing about homelessness that Nathan had learned quickly. It didn't just take your possessions. It took your visibility. People's eyes slid past you as if repelled by some magnetic force. As he brushed crumbs from his beard, a distinctive sound cut through the ambient noise of the charging station. A high-pitched whine followed by an ominous click-click-click. Nathan's head snapped up, his engineer's brain instantly diagnosing the noise. Power management system failure. Startup sequence abort. A small crowd had gathered around a black Tesla Roadster, the new model, not even officially released yet. Its lights flickering ominously while its owner paced beside it. Phone pressed to his ear, voice sharp with frustration. "No, I'm telling you it won't start. Yes, the battery is charged. No, I don't have time to wait for a tow. I'm supposed to be at the conference in 20 minutes. There was something oddly familiar about that voice, a distinctive cadence Nathan had heard before, though he couldn't immediately place it. He squinted through the gathering darkness as the car's owner turned, his face illuminated by the harsh LED lighting of the charging station. A high-pitched whine followed by an ominous click-click-click. Nathan's head snapped up, his engineer's brain instantly diagnosing the noise. Power management system failure. Startup sequence abort. A small crowd had gathered around a black Tesla Roadster, the new model, not even officially released yet. Its lights flickering ominously while its owner paced beside it. Phone pressed to his ear, voice sharp with frustration. "No, I'm telling you it won't start. Yes, the battery is charged. No, I don't have time to wait for a tow. I'm supposed to be at the conference in 20 minutes. There was something oddly familiar about that voice, a distinctive cadence Nathan had heard before, though he couldn't immediately place it. He squinted through the gathering darkness as the car's owner turned, his face illuminated by the harsh LED lighting of the charging station. Nathan's breath caught. Elon Musk. The Elon Musk. Pacing beside his stalled vehicle less than 50 feet away. Nathan's fingers twitched as his brain automatically catalogued what was happening. This wasn't a standard battery issue. The symptoms pointed to a firmware glitch. The power management system had stalled mid-cycle, triggering an emergency shutdown. He'd seen similar issues in prototype electric vehicles during his time at Precision Motors. It was fixable. Simple, even, if you knew what you were doing. But who would believe that a homeless man sitting on a concrete barrier had the solution to fix Elon Musk's custom roadster? Nathan pulled his blanket tighter around his shoulders. It wasn't his problem. The last thing he needed was to approach one of the world's richest men and get labeled as some lunatic or, worse, get arrested for harassing a celebrity. What the hell is taking them so long? Musk's frustrated voice carried across the parking lot as he ended his call. Nathan clenched his jaw. Walking away from a fixable problem, that wasn't him. It had never been him. Even now, with everything stripped away, that fundamental truth remained. Nathan Cole fixed things. It was who he was at his core. Before he could talk himself out of it, Nathan stood and crossed the lot, his heart hammering in his chest. The small crowd of onlookers barely registered his approach, their attention fixed on the spectacle of a billionaire with a broken car. "It's not the battery," Nathan said, his voice steadier than he expected. Several heads turned. A couple in matching Patagonia jackets gave him a skeptical once-over, their eyes traveling from his worn-out sneakers to his unkempt beard. Musk, still distracted by his phone, didn't immediately look up. Nathan took another step forward. "It's the power management system. The car didn't complete its startup sequence. You need a hard reboot. This got Musk's attention. He looked up from his phone, eyes narrowing as he assessed the disheveled man before him. There was no disgust in his gaze, just intense calculation. And you know this how? Musk asked, his tone neither dismissive nor particularly welcoming. Nathan crossed his arms over his chest, suddenly very aware of how he must look and smell. Used to be an engineer. Worked with high-voltage drive systems for over 15 years. A pause hung in the air. The crowd was still watching, several people now filming with their phones, waiting for Musk to wave off this strange interruption to their evening entertainment. Instead, Musk raised an eyebrow. And you think you can fix it? Nathan met his gaze directly. I know I can. Musk studied him for a beat longer, then held out a matte black key card. All right. Show me. The moment that changes everything. The moment the key card touched Nathan's palm, something electric surged through him. It wasn't the static charge from the card. It was purpose, rushing back like blood to a limb that had fallen asleep. He approached the car with a confidence that had been dormant for months. Sliding into the driver's seat, he felt the supple leather against his ragged clothes. A jarring contrast that would have embarrassed him if his mind weren't already deep into diagnostic mode. The Roadster's touchscreen flickered weakly, its interface frozen in a loop of attempted reboots. Nathan tapped the brake pedal, watching how the system responded, or rather, failed to respond properly. The software was trapped, unable to complete its initialization sequence. The solution was clear, but it wasn't one found in any owner's manual. This required knowledge of the system's underlying architecture, the kind of insight only someone who had spent years working with similar technology would possess. Nathan pressed a specific combination of buttons, forcing a manual shutdown that bypassed the frozen diagnostics. Then, with a precisely timed sequence of brake and accelerator inputs, he triggered a secondary restart protocol, one that most Tesla owners, and even many Tesla technicians, didn't know existed. For 3 long seconds, the car was completely dead. The gathered crowd murmured, some chuckling, clearly believing this strange man had just made things worse. Then the dashboard flickered back to life. The system rebooted smoothly, all systems operational, as if nothing had ever been wrong. Nathan exhaled slowly and stepped out of the vehicle. Should be good now. Musk leaned in, glancing at the now functioning screen. He tapped through several settings menus, checking that everything was indeed operational, then turned to Nathan with an expression of genuine respect. That was impressive, he said simply. Nathan stepped back, wiping his hands on his jeans reflexively. Wasn't that hard? Musk's mouth quirked into a half-smile. Maybe not for you. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a neatly folded stack of bills. Here, for your time. Nathan stiffened. This was exactly why he hadn't wanted to approach Musk in the first place. He didn't want charity. Didn't want to be another viral story of some homeless guy getting a few $100s from a billionaire. A feel-good moment for social media that would change nothing. He shook his head firmly. I don't want your money. Musk seemed genuinely surprised by this response, his head tilting slightly as if recalibrating his assessment of the man before him. Then what do you want? Nathan glanced around at the people still watching, some whispering to each other, others still filming. He felt the familiar weight in his chest, the weight of being ignored, overlooked, discarded. What did he want? A job? His life back? A world where experience and knowledge still mattered more than which coding bootcamp you'd attended? He swallowed hard. Nothing. Just glad I could help. Musk studied him, his expression unreadable. Then, after what felt like a very long pause, he gave a small nod. Nathan turned, ready to disappear back into the shadows, to return to his concrete bed and the invisibility that had become his existence. But before he could take another step, Musk called after him. What's your name? Nathan hesitated, then looked back over his shoulder. Nathan. Musk nodded again, a slight but deliberate movement. Good work, Nathan. As Nathan walked away, he had no idea that this brief interaction, these few minutes on an ordinary Tuesday evening, would completely alter the trajectory of his life. He had no way of knowing that this wasn't the end of his story. It was only the beginning. Unwanted spotlight. Nathan expected nothing to come from that night's encounter. By morning, he figured he'd wake up, shake the stiffness from his back, and go about the business of survival like he always did. Maybe find a meal. Maybe fix another broken thing for a few dollars. Just another day of existing in the margins. Just another day of being invisible. But that's not what happened. He woke to the sound of voices. Too many voices. Blinking against the early morning sunlight, he sat up and realized he wasn't alone. A cluster of people stood at the edge of the parking lot, some with cameras balanced on their shoulders, others with microphones in hand. News crews. Nathan's stomach twisted. He pulled his blanket around his shoulders and stayed perfectly still, hoping against hope that they weren't here for him. There he is. A woman in a navy blazer pointed, and suddenly they were moving toward him, microphones extended like weapons. Nathan. A reporter ducked past a charging station. Can you tell us what happened last night? What did Elon Musk say to you? Did he offer you a job? The questions came rapid-fire, cameras rolling, eyes locked on him like he was some kind of zoo exhibit. Nathan's pulse pounded in his ears. He wanted to get up, to walk away, to disappear. But where? The whole lot was surrounded, and the idea of running just made him look guilty of something. He hadn't done anything wrong. He hadn't asked for this. Then, cutting through the noise came a different voice, calm but authoritative. All right, that's enough. The crowd parted just enough for Nathan to see him. Elon Musk, dressed in dark jeans and a jacket, hands in his pockets, standing there like this was just another morning meeting. The cameras pivoted toward the billionaire, microphones now thrust in his direction. Mr. Musk, is it true you're offering Nathan a position at Tesla? Nathan's breath caught. Wait, what? Musk's gaze flickered toward him, then back to the reporters. We'll discuss that privately. Then he turned to Nathan. Come with me. Nathan hesitated, his brain still trying to catch up to this bizarre reality. But with cameras rolling and reporters firing off more questions, he figured anywhere was better than sitting on cold pavement being interrogated by the press. So, without another word, he stood up, clutching his backpack to his chest, and followed Musk toward a waiting vehicle. It wasn't until they were both seated in the sleek black Tesla and pulling away from the supercharger lot that Nathan realized he wasn't just leaving behind a crowd of nosy reporters. He was stepping into something much bigger than he could have ever expected. The interior of the Tesla smelled of leather and new technology, a world away from the streets Nathan had been surviving on. Musk didn't speak right away. He just drove, his fingers tapping lightly against the steering wheel. The silence stretched, giving Nathan too much time to think about how out of place he was, how he didn't belong in this world anymore. Finally, Musk glanced over. So you really didn't want the money? Nathan exhaled slowly. I didn't help you for that. Musk nodded, as if confirming something to himself. You could have taken it. Could have walked away and never thought about that car again. Nathan turned toward the window, watching the Sacramento landscape blur past. I don't fix things for a payout. I fix them because it's what I do. It's who I am. A small smile played at the corner of Musk's mouth. That's Ray. The Tesla glided down the highway, past towering buildings and sprawling office parks. Nathan should have asked where they were going, but something told him it didn't matter. He was already in it now, whatever it was. After about 20 minutes, Musk pulled up to a security gate. The sign ahead read Tesla Engineering Headquarters, Palo Alto, California. Nathan's chest tightened. He hadn't walked into a facility like this in years. Not since Precision Motors. Not since before. Musk flashed his badge at the gate, the barrier lifted, and within moments they were inside, glass, steel, and innovation surrounding them. This was the beating heart of Tesla, a place where the future was being designed and constructed every day. Musk parked near a side entrance and stepped out. Come on. Nathan followed, his heart pounding against his ribs. He felt painfully out of place. He hadn't shaved in weeks. He smelled like the street. His shoes had holes in them. The security guard at the door gave him a long, suspicious look but said nothing as Musk led him inside. They walked through a long hallway lined with project boards and sketches of Tesla's upcoming models. Engineers in sleek company polos passed by, some casting curious glances at Nathan, whispering to each other as they passed. Finally, Musk stopped outside a glass-walled lab. Inside, a team of engineers hovered around what appeared to be a half-assembled electric motor, deep in discussion. Musk pushed the door open and gestured toward the table in the center of the room. "Here's the deal," he said, his voice matter-of-fact. "This motor's been giving my team hell for weeks. Diagnostics keep failing, and no one can figure out why. They're about to scrap the whole system and start over." Nathan's eyes locked onto the machine. Even at a glance, he could tell it wasn't a standard-issue Tesla component. It was something new, experimental, pushing the boundaries of what electric motors could do. Musk folded his arms across his chest. "I want to see what you can do." A heavy silence fell over the lab. The engineers exchanged glances, some clearly skeptical, others curious. Nathan felt their doubt like a physical presence, a homeless man off the street standing in the middle of Tesla's advanced research division, being asked to solve a problem their best minds couldn't crack. One of them, a sharp-looking woman in a black polo with the name A. Patel embroidered on it, spoke first. "You want him to fix what we couldn't." The challenge in her voice was unmistakable. Musk didn't blink. "I want to see if we overlooked something." Nathan stepped forward, ignoring the weight of their stares. This was his element. This was what he knew. Here, in front of this machine, his circumstances didn't matter, only his knowledge did. His fingers hovered over the motor, almost reverently. He could feel the problem before even touching it. An engineer's intuition built over thousands of hours of hands-on experience. He turned to the nearest engineer. "You guys check the inverter software?" Patel frowned. "Of course. Multiple times." Nathan nodded slowly. "Then the issue isn't in the software." He tapped the casing. "It's mechanical. Something's jamming the cooling flow." Musk raised an eyebrow. "Show me." Nathan grabbed a nearby wrench and loosened a few bolts, peeling back the motor's protective casing. Inside, the sleek copper coils gleamed under the lab's fluorescent lights. He ran his fingers along the edge of the coolant manifold, then stopped, his fingertip detecting what their sophisticated diagnostics had missed. A small piece of debris, no bigger than a fingernail, was wedged in one of the cooling ports, disrupting the entire system. He carefully extracted it and held it up for all to see. "This," he said simply, "this is your problem." The room fell silent. Patel took the fragment, examining it with wide eyes. "It must have come loose during assembly." Another engineer muttered, "We ran a dozen software diagnostics, and none of them would have caught that." Musk's lips curved into a satisfied grin. "But he did." Nathan stepped back, rubbing his hands on his jeans automatically. "Like I said," he shrugged, "I fix things." Musk nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving Nathan. "Yeah, you do." But Nathan wasn't prepared for what Musk said next. Words that would set in motion a chain of events that would completely transform his shattered life. Second chances. Give him a workstation. Musk's directive cut through the lab like a laser. A few of the engineers hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances, but when Elon Musk spoke, people listened. That was the power of being Elon Musk. Patel sighed and gestured toward an open station in the corner. "I'll set him up." Nathan followed her, acutely aware of the stares still following him. He didn't belong here, not in these polished halls, not surrounded by these brilliant minds in their branded Tesla polos, not with his worn-out clothes and the past he hadn't yet reconciled with. Patel handed him a tablet. "We've got another motor running hot. The cooling system is sound, but it keeps overheating after 5 minutes. If you're as sharp as Musk thinks you are, you'll find the issue." There was a clear challenge in her voice, a test. Nathan understood. He was an outsider, an anomaly, a disruption to the established order of their carefully curated team. He needed to prove himself, not just to Musk, but to all of them. Nathan exhaled and rolled up his sleeves. This was his language, the dialect he spoke most fluently. He scanned the data, his brain shifting into high gear, the cobwebs of his street existence burning away in the intense focus of engineering problem-solving. The system logs were solid. No faults in the coolant flow, no obstructions, no software glitches. But the temperature kept climbing. Why? He stared at the specs, the numbers flowing through his mind like music. Then something clicked, a discordant note in the symphony of data. The heat dispersion rate. It was off. Not because of a mechanical failure, but because the materials themselves weren't handling the thermal transfer properly. He turned to Patel. What's the alloy mix in the cooling plates? She frowned, clearly not expecting this line of questioning. Standard composite blend. The same we've used in all our models. Nathan shook his head. Then that's your problem. It's not dispersing fast enough. The motor isn't overheating because of a defect. It's overheating because the materials can't keep up with the load. Patel's eyes widened slightly. You're saying it's a design flaw? Nathan nodded. You need a different heat-resistant compound. Something with a higher thermal transfer rate for this particular application. Musk, who had been listening from across the room, grinned. That's twice now. The engineers around them murmured, some pulling up new schematics, others already running simulations based on what Nathan had just suggested. The energy in the room had shifted, skepticism giving way to grudging respect. Patel turned back to him, genuine curiosity now replacing her earlier hostility. How the hell do you notice all this? Nathan hesitated. He didn't like talking about before, about the life he'd lost, the fall from grace that had led him to that overpass. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't being ignored or dismissed. These people were actually listening to him. He ran a hand over his face. I spent 15 years in automotive engineering. Designed drive systems, worked with high-voltage propulsion. It's in my blood. Musk nodded. And then? Nathan exhaled heavily, forcing himself to say the words aloud. And then I lost everything. The lab went quiet again. There was no pity in Musk's eyes, just assessment, calculation, decision. Bad luck or bad decisions? Musk asked bluntly. Nathan met his gaze directly. Both. Musk seemed to reach a conclusion. Come work for me. Nathan blinked. What? Musk gestured around the lab. You just solved 2 problems in under an hour that some of the smartest people here have been stuck on for weeks. You don't belong on the street, Nathan. You belong here. The words hit Nathan like a freight train. He'd spent years believing his value had expired, that the world had passed him by. But here he was, standing in the heart of Tesla, proving to some of the brightest minds in the industry that he still had it, that he still mattered. His throat tightened. I don't have a resume. No address. No. Musk waved him off. I don't give a damn about that. You've got skills and you don't quit. That's all I need to know. Nathan swallowed hard, his hands shaking not from nerves but from something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. He nodded. All right. Musk's mouth curved into a satisfied smirk. Good. You start Monday. But as Nathan would soon discover, getting the job was the easy part. The real challenge would be proving he deserved to keep it, and rebuilding his shattered life one day at a time. Rising from the ashes. Monday came faster than Nathan expected. He showed up at Tesla's headquarters with nothing but the clothes on his back, a freshly shaved face courtesy of a shelter volunteer, and the weight of expectation pressing on his shoulders. They gave him a badge, a workstation, a fresh set of tools. For the first time in years, he had a place to be, a reason to wake up. But the doubts didn't disappear as he sat at his desk, staring at the sleek interface of the Tesla engineering system. His hands hesitated over the keyboard. What if he couldn't keep up? What if the years on the street had dulled his instincts? What if he failed, not just himself, but the man who had inexplicably given him this second chance? Then Patel dropped a stack of design reports on his desk and said simply, "You ready?" And just like that, Nathan got to work. The first few weeks were a battle on multiple fronts. He had to prove himself not just to Musk, but to the entire team. There were sidelong glances, skeptical expressions, whispered conversations when they thought he wasn't listening. Some resented the special treatment, the unconventional hiring. Others were simply curious about the homeless man who had seemingly earned Elon Musk's respect overnight. Nathan didn't have time for their doubt or curiosity. He did what he did best. He solved problems. A software glitch in the energy recovery system? Fixed. An issue with the regenerative braking algorithm? Identified and resolved. A new prototype battery overheating under high stress? He pinpointed the flaw and suggested a solution within hours. One by one, he earned their respect not through words or explanations or his past credentials, but through consistent, undeniable results. By the end of his second week, Patel wasn't just giving him assignments, she was asking for his input on her own projects. By the third, several other engineers were doing the same. And by the fourth, Musk pulled him aside and said simply, "You're one of the sharpest engineers I've got." That night, instead of returning to the sidewalk near the supercharger station, Nathan checked into a modest motel. He took the longest shower of his life, scrubbing away years of dirt and exhaustion and despair. Standing before the steamy mirror afterward, he stared at his reflection for a long time. For the first time in years, he recognized the man looking back at him. 6 months later, Nathan stood outside a small apartment complex in Palo Alto. It wasn't fancy by Silicon Valley standards, just a simple one-bedroom in a decent neighborhood. But it was his. A place with walls. A place with a door he owned the key to. As he stepped inside his apartment for the first time, setting down his small duffel bag containing all his worldly possessions, he thought about how close he'd come to fading away completely. All it had taken was one night, one decision to stand up, to speak, to take a chance. And now he wasn't just surviving, he was living again. He had his own team at Tesla, working on next-generation motor designs. He had colleagues who respected him, who sought out his opinion. He had purpose. Last week, he'd even reached out to Abby. The conversation had been awkward, hesitant, but not hostile. They weren't getting back together. Too much had happened, too much had changed, but they were talking again. It was a start. Nathan's story wasn't just about luck, though certainly that had played its part. It was about resilience. About never letting your circumstances define you. About remembering who you are at your core, even when the world seems determined to make you forget. If you've ever felt like you've hit rock bottom, like the world has moved on without you, remember Nathan's journey. Remember that one decision, one moment, one chance encounter can change everything. Epilogue. The power of second chances. 2 years later, Nathan stood on a stage at Tesla's annual Innovation Summit, presenting the revolutionary new motor design his team had developed. A design that would increase efficiency by 22% while reducing production costs by nearly a third. As he fielded questions from industry leaders and tech journalists, he caught Musk's eye at the back of the room. The billionaire gave him a small nod, the same nod he'd given that night at the supercharger station. That evening, as the event wound down, Nathan found himself alone with Musk for a moment. "You know," Musk said, swirling the water in his glass, "most people would have taken the money that night." Nathan shrugged. "I didn't want charity. I wanted dignity." Musk studied him. "It wasn't charity I was offering at first. Just payment for services rendered." A pause. "But I'm glad you refused it." "Why's that?" "Because it told me something important about you. That you weren't broken, just bent. People who are truly broken take the easy out every time." Nathan considered this. "I was pretty close to broken. But not quite. And sometimes that margin makes all the difference between disappearing and coming back stronger." Musk set down his glass. "The world doesn't give many second chances, Nathan. I'm glad you made the most of yours." As Nathan drove home that night to his modest house in Mountain View, a house he now owned outright thanks to 2 years of hard work and smart financial decisions, he thought about all the other Nathans out there. People with skills, with knowledge, with value to offer, who had been discarded by a society that moved too fast and forgave too little. He thought about the new foundation he was establishing, Second Circuit, a program to identify and retrain displaced skilled workers from traditional industries, preparing them for roles in the new economy. It wouldn't save everyone, but it might save some. It might give a few more people that second chance he'd been fortunate enough to receive. Because sometimes all it takes is one moment, one decision, one person willing to see your value when you've forgotten it yourself.